1, 2, you hear the clock ticking, tick tock. You about to stop living, tick tock. I want you to remember me, tick tock. But the dead don't have no memory. I'm coming. Nobody can stop me, nobody can hold me, nobody control me. I'm coming. I'm here to do my thing. I'm here to bring the pain. I'm never ever gonna change. I'm coming.
Hey folks, Evil DM here, back with another video for Idols and Efreetis. Another car video for you, because I like doing these things in my car. Got this little setup here, stuck attached to the wheel and everything. It's kind of cool. But anyway, this week I wanted to talk about a topic that was given to me by Death Saving Throws DM. He wanted to know a little bit about how I handle spell components, but I just wanted to talk real quick. If you turn to page 44 of the Player's Handbook, components, as previously mentioned, are V for verbal, S for somatic, and or M for material. This contains the parts of the spell. So you have the V, the S, and the M. So most DMs that I know handle it different ways. But before I go on, if you flip back to page 40, it also says that your Dungeon Master may add or delete from the spells and may even add or delete a spell entirely. He will inform you of these changes prior to selecting the spell or when a new spell becomes available to your character. So keep that in mind before we go on how this video is working with spell components, because according to the book, the DM is allowed to change things however he feels in his campaign. It says it right there in the book. Now, I've known a lot of people that have argued about how you can't do that. It does state it right in the book. So it really depends on what the magic user is doing for the spell. Some spells do require some verbal, out of the mouth, some somatic, which is the hand gesturing, and then there's some materials. Each spell will tell you basically what those things are. Now, you as the DM can follow the book and ignore that little paragraph at the top and not adjust anything, and actually make spell magic users, which I mostly focus on for this video, and when I talk about spell components, I mostly focus on those because those are the ones that are the pain in the ass to take care of. But it can work for clerics, illusionists, druids, any spellcaster, really. But you can actually have them write on their sheet anytime they're going to be using spells, what spell component they have, and what they're going to be crossing off every time they cast a spell. So certain spells don't have any materials, which you don't have to worry about. Just worry about the verbal and the somatic, and that's it. But some of them, like, have feather, Featherfall will have a feather, things like that. It'll say it right at the bottom of the spell. But you'll need these things. So how do you handle these things? Well, like I said, you can have them every time they go into town. They know their spells that they have. If you're playing by the book, you give them their 4 plus whatever they have in the beginning. And from that spell, you could say, okay, my guy goes to the general store and he picks up the following spell components, and then the DM makes the price up by checking the book and or whatever he decides. You can do that, which is fun for some people, but it's not how I've ever handled it, and I think it's too much book work keep for me and or the players. And most of the players I play with are people who just want to play the game and don't really want to deal with bookkeeping and things like that. So it does allow in the rules for substitution. Materials are allowed. This is up to your dungeon master. So if you are using that method, you can substitute materials in, but sometimes the spell won't go off as intended or may have some type of weird side effect to it or something. It really, again, depends on your dungeon master and how he wants to handle those things. Some things that I have tried to employ for spell components, and I've written them down here on my little piece of paper so I can tell you them, is that you have most of the common spell components of like levels 1 to 3, common things that you can easily find. Like if you're going into town, you can hand a list to the guy in the store or the magic shop or whatever type of general store you have in your game, and you just say he picks it up and it's all in the background. All that bull crap is done with and you don't have to worry about it. And you just say, okay, as soon as you walk into the town, you donate a certain amount of money off your sheet. You just cross it off. Say 5 gold for argument's sake. Every time you enter into town, 5 gold gets taken off. That's the background stuff of your magic user, whatever, illusionist, druid, cleric, whatever, going to the place of business, collecting the stuff he needs to do, putting it in his little pouches and everything, setting it up for the spells when he needs it. That's fine. It's not fair if you're going on long adventures because you won't have a chance to go into towns and stuff like that often. So it kind of defeats that purpose. So you could say more gold. Say I'm going off for a week. So maybe you change the price to 10 gold or something. However much you decide as a DM, and I would probably sit with the player and agree upon this. What is fair based on the listing of things for the certain amount of spells you have. Now, then there's the second thing I've done is called the spell component pouch of holding, which kind of mimics a spell like a bag of holding, but it has limited number of charges. So whatever in the lower levels the magic user needs, he reaches into his pouch, pulls it out, boom, done, minus one of the uses or charges. Yeah, but that's cool. And every time he goes back into town, he has to restock it if you want to do that. Or when the charges run out, he has to go find a high-level wizard, or he has to go find some type of magic shop to restock that pouch and recharge it back up again, and you could charge whatever fee you want for that. I've done that a bunch of times, too. That helps with the paperwork. It just makes you just cross off the number. You just tell them, okay, you have 10 uses. Cool. You can use it for spells 1 to blah, 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 blah. Whatever you decide. And the player just ticks them off, ticks it off, or you, the DM, tick it off. A lot easier. Probably the best solution out of the bunch here. That's up to you, really. Then there is one where it's just component gold, I call it. And I believe they use this method in 4th edition. I'm not really positive. I didn't play a lot of it, but I was told when I made this up many years ago, that was like, oh, that kind of reminds me of 4th edition. And I was just like, oh, I had no idea. I played 4th edition all 4 times, and I was just basically a fighter, so I have no idea. I did not like it whatsoever because it relied too much on minis. I'm not really a mini type person and a map type person. I think it takes way too long, but that's just my opinion. You may like it, and I understand that, so whatever works for you works for you. Just didn't work for me. So it basically, you could find these gold components and you collect it in your bag, and you just, every time you cast a spell, you minus off a certain amount of gold based on the spell level. Like, for common spells that need components levels 1 to 3, it's a gold piece of spell component per level. So 2 for each level 2, level 3, things like that. Didn't really work out all that well because it was just too much of another bookkeeping thing, and people didn't really like it at all because they got confused. Well, why can't I use it to buy things? Well, it's not exactly gold, but it's gold components. Okay, it's supposed to represent components that you're going to purchase, but didn't really work out, so I kind of dropped that method. It might work for 4th edition. I don't know. You'd have to tell me, 4th edition players out there, did it work? I think it's ritual components it was called. I'm not sure exactly. And finally, the method that I've used is just basically waive spell components completely and not worry about it whatsoever, unless it's one of the high-level spells that requires something rare, like a diamond or something like a tear duct of an ankle of whatever. I don't know, something silly. The eye of a skeleton head that's been buried in. Why would a skeleton have a head of an eye? But anyway, really weird and obscure things. Yeah, you have to have the players go find those things because, those are rare items. And they just pick them up anywhere, like a diamond, a specific diamond size or something from one of the spells I recall. And the dust of the lich's butthole. I have no idea. Just a joke. But, things like that you have to have some quests for. You wouldn't be able to just say, I just waived that thing. You could if you wanted to, but it really doesn't make sense and gives them a little too much power on the spell side. By that level, they are pretty much that very powerful anyway if you're talking about those spells. But I still think in spirit of the game, making a quest out of finding that little special item is better idea than just waving your hand on it. And on a final note, I know there was a lot of controversy in the groups I played with in the past, and I'd like to know how you guys handle it out there. But it's interesting to note on page 100 of the player's handbook, spell scrolls list being written, it requires no somatic or material components. So how I've always interpreted that was, while you're writing it, you don't require those things because you're not casting it. But say you cast these high-level spells that require components, such as materials, you still need those things. That's how I know. I didn't say I was going to rule on it, but I want to hear how you do it. So look at that paragraph on page 100 and tell me what you think in the comments below. Do you do it as think it is you don't need it? It's a spell scroll, boom, done. You don't need components. Or is it just like any other spell? You definitely need certain components and hand gestures, regardless if it's on a spell book, or what. I'm leaning more towards regardless, you're going to still use those spell components. And I mean, that's how it works. And some people have argued in the past, well, no, it says you don't. Oh, well, it really depends on who's reading and how you do it. And most of the time, I'm not going to really argue with players over certain things because I just want to play. And unless it's something really, really bad, and then we have to stop and just say, okay, here's the ruling. Let's talk about this after the game. That's generally how things work in my games. I'll just say, okay, for now, we're doing this. Afterwards, we'll talk about it when we're not playing. That way we don't have to break the flow. People don't get heated. It also gives them a few minutes to relax and, think about things. So when it comes time to talk about it, we're not sitting there in a heated argument and people are screaming and yelling at each other. But that's what I do for spell components, death save throw. And tell me what you think in the comments below. How do you handle it? What do you do for your campaigns? Do you make them specifically write down every damn spell component or not? So with that said, keep it original, keep it old school, and good night, everybody.